Hey, what's up, guys? And welcome back to another episode of UFC Roundup. I'm Paul Felder, and as always, joined with my man, Michael Chiesa. We have another big pay-per-view coming up, Michael. UFC 262, Oliveira versus Chandler. The lightweight belt will be settled this coming weekend. How excited are you? Not only to have a pay-per-view, but another sold-out crowd, sold out in minutes, I believe. I'm pretty stoked for this one.
Well, look, we all know that everything's bigger in Texas, so I'm sure the second event back in 2021 with fans, it's going to be electric. I love watching your boy, Charles Oliveira, fight and seeing Michael Chandler get his shot at winning the lightweight title with only a second fight in the UFC. I mean, it's just a blockbuster main event, a stacked card top to bottom. I'm super pumped.
Yeah. And let's go right into this event. Obviously, Charles Oliveira has been, I believe he's on an 8-fight winning streak. He's looked phenomenal. He's not only been doing what he always does, which is submit people and dominate people on the ground. He's dominated somebody like Tony Ferguson just from bell to bell with the decision win, almost had that arm bar, knocking people out, TKOing people, submitting people ever since his last loss, which I can't quite remember who that guy was that was the last one to finish him and beat him. But he's been killing it ever since then, Michael.
Hey, Paul, don't sell yourself short. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Felder's the last guy to beat Charles Oliveira before he's been on this 8-0 run that he's on. But look, you said it best. This guy can do it all. And you know, everybody thought he was just kind of a submission grappler, essentially a one-trick pony. And on this 8-fight win streak, he's shown vast improvement in his striking. And that can be attributed to his time under Diego Lima at the Shootbox Academy down in Brazil. But it was the win over Tony Ferguson where he really showed the wrinkles to his wrestling game. I mean, Tony Ferguson, this guy was an All-American wrestler in college. And, you know, you look at Tony Ferguson's leg, he's got the USA Wrestling tattoo on his calf. You know, usually if a guy takes it that far to get a lifelong branding of himself involving the sport of wrestling, he's going to be pretty dang good. And he kind of beat him at what he's best at. So he just showed that he's just a very well-rounded mixed martial artist. And he's going to need all of those tools going against a guy in Michael Chandler.
Yeah, he is going to need all that. And I agree that wrestling has looked phenomenal. And I think what it is for Charles, since he started this surge and this really just incredible winning streak, is I think he's trusting himself at lightweight, trusting that he's capable of beating these guys. Because, well, when you keep doing it time in and time out, you can't help but trust yourself. I think finally putting 145 to bed and saying, okay, I'm growing into my body at 155 pounds. I'm going to focus on getting stronger, having better conditioning, and better striking. Ever since he's really started focusing on those things, he's been unstoppable. And then that Tony Ferguson fight, a lot of people had him counted out, and he looked unbelievable, taking him down, throwing up submissions. His striking has looked better than ever. But on the other side, Michael Chandler is a guy who we haven't seen much of him in the UFC, obviously, just that TKO of Dan Hooker, who's as tough as they come. But if you watch the evolution of his career outside of the UFC, when he was in Bellator, he was champion. Obviously, he's got some losses on his record, but this guy is a powerhouse, a freak athlete, and can wrestle his face off. So he's definitely going to present a lot of problems for Charles Oliveira. And if Charles is sleeping on him because he hasn't been in the organization that long, it could be a problem.
Well, look, Michael Chandler's must-see TV. I've followed his career ever since he first started the sport of mixed martial arts. And this is a guy before he even had 10 pro wins to his name, you know, he beat Eddie Alvarez for the Bellator title. So that just shows the caliber of athlete he is. And as we know, Eddie Alvarez, former lightweight champion of the UFC. But, you know, Michael Chandler, known to be the All-American wrestler out of Missouri, he's a powerhouse with his hands. I mean, this guy, he can do it from both stances. And we saw it in the Dan Hooker fight. Did a great job setting up that left hook by attacking the body, getting Hooker to bite on those body shots, came upstairs with that shot. And if he gets you hurt, he will swarm you and he will finish you. And, you know, as we know, he's a very fast starter. So what I'm interested to see is if this fight goes past the first or second round, how does it play out? Because this new version of Charles Oliveira we've seen, you know, he can go the distance. He can fight 3 hard rounds. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this fight pans out. Both of these guys have a lot of great tools going into this fight. And it's not just on paper, it looks like striker versus grappler. But, I mean, I think these guys both have very well-rounded skill sets. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in this main event.
Yeah, that's what I love about this one, right? I think, you know, we're in 2021 and we're finally seeing these guys that are fighting for belts at the tops of these organizations and these divisions are full mixed martial artists. You know, you don't hear us talking so much about, okay, it's a striker versus grappler or a jiu-jitsu guy versus a wrestler. Everybody's getting so good at doing all of these things. I mean, Charles was known for his submission skills. Now he's showing off wrestling, getting body locks and taking people down, picking them up and slamming them down. We've never really seen Charles do that with guys that are physically capable, like a Tony Ferguson. And on the other side, Michael Chandler, known for his wrestling, but he's got submission skills, he's got submission defense, and he's got dynamite in his hand. So really, I don't know where this fight is going to play out. I think predominantly on the feet, because I think they're both so good at grappling. But I think it's going to come down to Charles's Muay Thai skills versus the boxing power of Michael Chandler. And whoever can kind of start dominating in that area first, I think is going to win. And I think Michael's right when he talks about Charles being a little bit susceptible to wilting. He did it in my fight. He did it in Anthony Pettis' fight. He's done it against Max Holloway when he got hurt or he had a stinger in his neck and he quit. I'm not saying that's still who he is today, but Michael Chandler is going to be hunting to find that weakness inside of him. I can tell you that.
Oh, 100%. These guys are finishers. These guys are going to look to put each other out before they hit that round 5, 25-minute mark. But I got to ask you, Paul, what is the bigger X factor? Is it going to be Michael Chandler's grappling ability? Because if you can go look on social media and there's videos swirling around the internet of Michael Chandler scrambling and wrestling and keeping up with the welterweight champion Kamaru Usman. So is the X factor going to be Michael Chandler's wrestling and his grappling, or is it going to be Oliveira's newfound love for the stand-up game? Because we've seen Oliveira's stand-up. I mean, he doesn't just throw basic Muay Thai combinations. He'll come at you, he'll throw flying kicks, jumping knees, spinning back. There's just a lot of dynamic strikes. So I got to ask you, Paul, what's going to be the bigger X factor? Chandler's grappling or Oliveira's Muay Thai?
I think for me, and obviously this is why it's so good, because we can disagree on this and both have an opinion on this matter. But for me, watching this fight and breaking it down and thinking about it, it's going to be Charles on his feet and his ability to throw knees, throw elbows, throw kicks. He attacks the legs really well. He's long, he's skinny and lean, but now he's showing that he's got, some strength and conditioning to back all of that up, and he's got knockout power. I mean, look at when he fought my boy Jarrett Gordon, who's one of my best friends in the world. He caught him with that sneaky right hand and put him out. And Jarrett's been hit with some big shots and can take a hit, and he put him down to a knee and then finished him. He's just so sneaky and so aggressive because he doesn't care if you take him down, right? Those kind of guys are dangerous. Whereas I think it's different for Chandler. I think he can't just get reckless with his hands, because if Charles takes him down, I think he doesn't want to be down there on his back against Oliveira. I think he wants to be on top, doing damage if he's at all going to be on the mat. So I think the kickboxing of Charles Oliveira is the X factor in this fight.
And of course, Paul, you knew you were going to disagree on this, because in this podcast, you got the striker in Paul Felder, you got the grappler in me, Michael Chiesa, on the other side. So of course, I'm going to take Michael Chandler's grappling as the X factor, because this fight will hit the ground at some point. This fight is going to hit the ground, whether it's somebody dropping one another, or you never know. Oliveira might actually roll the dice and try to take Michael Chandler down, throw a total curveball. But I still think Michael Chandler's grappling is going to be the biggest X factor in this fight, because he has the ability to really dictate where this fight goes. He can fight in the stand-up. He can knock you out with his hands. And if things start going south, he will 100% have the wrestling edge over Charles Oliveira. There's no way Charles Oliveira will be able to stop the takedown of Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler's too slick. He's too compact. He's too fast. He's too explosive. And if he decides he wants to take this fight to the floor, he will 100% do it. So, like I said, this is what makes this main event so interesting. You just got this contrast of styles, but neither guy really has a deficit in their skill set. So, nonetheless, it's going to be an ultra tough fight for either guy. Great main event for Houston. The fans are in for a treat.
All right, let's cut the BS, Michael. Who you got?
Oh, I can't pick against Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler's my guy. Iron Mike Chandler. I've been following his career forever. I love seeing him in this spot. The cards, the way the cards fell in terms of how he got into this main event couldn't have worked out any better. Dustin Poirier wanted to go pursue the trilogy fight with Conor McGregor, which is the right decision to do. Go get that money fight. Go settle the score with Conor McGregor. Yeah. And with Poirier taking that fight instead of fighting Oliveira for the title, it put Michael Chandler in this perfect spot. And look, the UFC paid big bucks for Michael Chandler, and he showed why they did it in that Dan Hooker fight. So I'm taking Michael Chandler.
I like it. I like everything you said. You're wrong, but I like it. But I got to go with Charles Oliveira. His confidence right now is through the roof. And I think that no matter where the fight goes, interesting that that's kind of how we both feel about this from opposite ends of the spectrum, right? You feel that Michael Chandler is going to be able to win because he can take this fight wherever he wants. I feel the same way. I feel like it doesn't matter where this fight goes. I agree that maybe Charles won't be the one in charge of whether or not it goes to the ground all the time throughout this fight, but that doesn't matter because he can just put himself in a position where he can let Chandler take him down, and he's still in a position to win the fight at any point. So I'm going to go with Charles Oliveira, the champion. Not to mention, that's pretty freaking sweet for me if I'm the last guy to take him out and he goes and wins the lightweight belt. It's pretty awesome.
Hey, look, as a competitor, you know this, Paul. You always root for the guys you've competed against, whether you've beat them or they have beaten you. You always want the people you've competed against to succeed in their career because it makes your fights against them look a lot better. But let's move on from the main event. We lost Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz, which it's a bummer, but it got rebooked for 263 in Arizona. So no worry, fans. We're still going to see Nate Diaz back in the octagon this year. But the new co-main event for UFC 262, I love this fight. This fight is phenomenal. Another common opponent that I had, my boy Beneil Dariush, taking on Tony Ferguson. And look, this fight, there's no way this fight's going to be a barn burner. I think that this fight's going to be fight of the night. You got the wild man, El Cucuy, Tony Ferguson, the guy that can do it all, and he can do it in the most unorthodox, creative fashion possible. And in Beneil Dariush, who in this win streak that he's on, he's just, I think, 5 or 6 fight of the night bonuses or performance bonuses in this win streak. It just shows that this guy, he's really putting it together in this stage in his career. What are your thoughts on this co-main event, Paul?
It's an incredible fight. And what I love about how Beneil's been handling it, we talked a little bit when we were having the format meeting the other day, is that he wants to match the crazy or out crazy Tony Ferguson. And really what that means to say to me is that he's just willing to go in there and let it rip. He wants to prove that he is one of the best lightweights in the world. He wants to get to that title shot. Beneil's been around a long time, man. Both of these guys have been at the top, on and off. Right now, Tony's obviously on a bit of a skid, but this is not something Beneil's unfamiliar with. He's had the same thing where he was at the top of the lightweight division in the top 10 for a while, went on a little bit of a skid, things didn't go his way, but he's always that guy that finds a way to surge back, finishes fights. When you hurt him, he almost becomes more dangerous. And in a fight with Tony Ferguson, at some point, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get elbowed. You're going to be on the ground. But Beneil can do everything that Tony can, and so well, and so dangerous on the feet. Southpaw, great kicks. And you could just tell the way he bites down on his mouthpiece and throws. He's not afraid to mix it up, but he's also extremely intelligent. If he feels he can out-wrestle you and out-grapple you, he will mix that in. We've seen him do that in fights before. But Tony really hungry for a win, and this is the perfect opportunity for him to go out. If he can beat a surging Beneil Dariush, he puts himself right back into the mix, and he can call out another top lightweight.
Yeah, I mean, if Beneil Dariush wins this fight, there's no way you can deny him is potentially being the next guy to fight for the title. Like, I know we have Poirier and Conor going down in July, but Beneil Dariush is on a 6-fight win streak at lightweight.
Yeah.
All but one are finishes. And Paul, you know how tough this weight class is. We both know. This was our division. This still is yours. Was once formerly mine. But to get 6 wins in a row with 5 finishes over top level competition, how can you deny this man? And for Tony, I give him a little bit of slack with the 2-fight skid that he's on, because both of those fights, they weren't full camps. He had a 3-week notice for the Charles Oliveira fight. And Charles Oliveira is the type of guy that you have to be very specific for in your training camp. He has specific skills that you have to address over a 2-month period before you step in the octagon with him. And Tony rolled the dice and said, yeah, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play. Jumped in there in 3 weeks. Things didn't go his way. And then you go back to the Gaethje fight. We know what went into that, all the crazy stuff going on with the pandemic and him training for Khabib, losing Khabib, Gaethje stepping in on short notice, just all the swirling parts that went into that fight with Justin Gaethje. So I give Tony some slack on this 2-fight skid that he's on, because he's had a full camp to prepare for Beneil Dariush. So I do think that we are going to see the best of Tony Ferguson that we've seen in quite some time. And with all this stuff being said about these 2 phenomenal fighters, Paul, you're not working this event. And it's always great to talk predictions with you, because as you fans, just so you know, if you are working as a commentator, you are not. It is a rule. You cannot make predictions on the fight. But since Paul isn't going to be octagon side for this one, I got to ask you, who you got? You got El Cucuy or the quiet wild man, Beneil Dariush?
And I'm going with the wild, quiet guy here, man. I like Beneil in this fight. I think he is so hungry to get his opportunity again to be at the top of this division. And I think he's not afraid of fighting Tony Ferguson. I think he's excited to be fighting somebody like Tony Ferguson. Beneil's a lot crazier than he lets on. He's a quiet, very humble, respectful man who does a lot of good for this world. First of all, if you go and you follow him and you look at his Instagram and his Twitter, this guy is always out. He's an activist. He's doing the right things. But more importantly, he's an insane fighter with all the skills to beat Tony Ferguson. I'm a huge fan of both of these guys, but we got to make picks. We're not here to talk, nonsense and beat around the bush. I'm going with Beneil Dariush on this one. How about you?
Yeah, this is a tough fight for me to call because I've been a big Tony Ferguson fan for a long time. But just like I said earlier, you want the people that you've competed against to succeed in this sport. And, Beneil's a former foe. We fought back in 2016, and I just love to see the resurgence he's on. And that's really the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I'm going with Beneil sheerly on the fact that him and I competed against each other. And when you fought somebody, you kind of have this weird intimate connection to them to get in there and to exchange blows and draw blood on each other and things like that. Like you have a special connection to these people that you compete against. So, I got to go with Beneil Dariush. And, for everybody that's watching this right now, when you get done watching this episode of UFC Roundup, go watch the UFC 262 Countdown show and listen to the things that Beneil Dariush is saying. When you know how humble and how much of a God-fearing man he is, to hear him say the things he says where I'm not going 1-for-1 with Tony Ferguson. If he lands one blow, I'm landing 3. When he says, I'm ready to out crazy the crazy man, like the things that he says with such conviction, and I believe him. So I'm going Beneil Dariush.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. That's a lot of what talks about. I feel like that confidence and that hunger to really out crazy Tony or, just outpoint him, outstrike him. That's what I love about it. But there's other amazing fights on this pay-per-view. And I'm going to start it off with another fight for me to watch. And speaking of former opponents, I got to go with Edson Barboza and Shane Burgos. First of all, Edson Barboza, one of the scariest, possibly the scariest kicker in all of mixed martial arts, against one of the slickest, craziest boxers in the 145-pound division, Shane Burgos. These guys are going to go to battle on this pay-per-view, and you do not want to miss this. I believe it's kicking off the pay-per-view as well. That's the best fight that you can have to get people tuned in and ready for this pay-per-view. I cannot wait for this fight. I love now that I'm done fighting Edson Barboza and he's at 145 pounds, I'm back to being a fan again. We've hatched it out. We've had so many talks in backstage areas. When I'm calling his fights, obviously I'm not rooting for him. I'm being even, but this one I'm not. And I'm a huge Shane Burgos fan. I'm just going to let these two boys go and do their work. And you guys at home, please don't miss that fight.
Paul, we sound like such grizzled vets when every single fight we've talked about so far on the show, we face somebody in these fights. And man, makes me feel old. Look, that fight's going to be a barn burner 100%. Everybody loves to watch Edson Barboza fight. But my pick is going to be Mike Grundy versus Lando Venata. Mike Grundy, big-time staple to the Kaibon camp, Team Kaibon in England. Darren Till gives this guy so much praise, and he's as tough as they come, very gritty wrestler. But Lando Venata, we know he is all action from the time he debuted in the UFC when he took on Tony Ferguson on short notice in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. He darn near pulled off the upset of the year, really putting it on Tony Ferguson when Tony Ferguson was on the prime of his 12-fight win streak. And he's making the move down to 145 pounds. And Lando's a very dense guy, and, he struggled a little bit to make 55, but he's made the lifestyle changes. And if you go to his Instagram, the dude is absolutely shredded right now. I do not miss a Lando Venata fight. He's all action. So that's going to be my pick. And that fight's going down on the prelims, midway through the prelims on ESPN. You do not want to miss that one. You don't want to miss any of the fights on this card, but that's my pick.
Yeah, and that just goes to speak the volumes of how stacked these cards are right now. You're like, yeah, this one's down midway through the prelims. It's not the featured prelim. It's not the opener for the pay-per-view. There's fights that are going to be on, the early prelims that you don't want to miss on these kind of cards. These pay-per-views are stacked, guys. But let's go back in time a little bit and let's talk about last Saturday. Obviously, Marina Rodriguez and Michelle Waterson went at it in a 5-round fight. Was originally slated for 3 rounds. It was moved up to 125 pounds because both these women took it on relatively short notice. It was just easier for them to do this. The fight itself was amazing, but let's even talk about for Rodriguez. Me and you were talking, Michael, that she had quite a bit of quarantine and travel issues going into this. And then for her to put on the performance that she did, I mean, hats off to her. And you got to give her a round of applause for more than just her fighting skills on Saturday night.
Yeah, when I went back and watched the fight, in the broadcast, they said and don't directly quote me on this, but, like I said, listening to the broadcast, she had 25 days of quarantine that she had to go through to get to this fight. She had visa issues. She didn't get to fight week until Thursday, and Thursday is usually the day when everybody gets to cut weight. So they bumped this fight up to 125 pounds. And on top of that, they stepped in on short notice for a main event to do those 2 extra rounds. And Paul, as well as I do, it takes a lot of preparation to get ready for a 25-minute fist fight. For me, I want a 10-week camp if I'm going to fight for 25 minutes. And these ladies stepped up on very short notice, filled that spot. And that fight was fireworks. I mean, Marina Rodriguez just looked phenomenal. And Michelle Waterson stepping up a weight class. She's already kind of having to come up a little bit. She's not the biggest strawweight. And for her to fight an ultra tall, rangy Marina Rodriguez the way she did, it was a competitive fight. For the most part, Marina won most of the rounds, but Michelle Waterson was very much in that fight. Her side kicks were on point. Both ladies showed a great striking arsenal. And it's a contrast of styles too, because Marina Rodriguez primarily a Muay Thai striker, and we all know Waterson, the karate hottie. Obviously, she comes from a karate background, but just a good contrast of styles, good striking battle, something that's very fan friendly. And not only did they fill that spot, but it was fireworks. They did a great job. And, kudos to both ladies. In a fight like that, Michelle Waterson's stock did not drop at all. She showed how tough she is. She's still a contender at 115 pounds. And, hats off to both ladies for filling that spot and giving the fans a great show.
Yeah, incredible display from both of them. Not, all the circumstances leading up to it, especially for Rodriguez. But again, for Michelle to move up to 125 pounds, you're right. She was an atomweight champ in Invicta before she was signed with the UFC. She had to put on weight to make 115 pounds. And then to make 125 pounds, I'm sure that week was a little stress-free as far as weight cuts are concerned. But another performance on Saturday that was hard for me to watch as a friend and former teammate of the man was Donald Cerrone. Had a lot of things kind of not go right leading into fight week. Obviously, he was slated to be fighting Diego Sanchez. A little bit of bad blood had developed between these guys. Diego is now gone from Jackson's, but Cowboy was at Jackson's. Both of them ended up leaving, and it seemed like the perfect fight towards the end of Cowboy's career for these two guys to finally let it go. And then for him to lose Diego and all of that went down, to be fighting a guy that, no disrespect to his opponent, but Cowboy doesn't know many of his opponents to begin with, and they could be top 10 guys in the world and he doesn't know them. Alex Morono is not on his radar. He didn't know who he was, and this guy knows every single thing about Cowboy. Obviously, he got finished. He's on quite the losing streak. Michael, what are your thoughts on this fight? Where does Cowboy go from here? I know we got some news from Dana White recently that he is, in fact, going to let Donald go back down to 155 pounds and have another fight. So just give me your thoughts on what you think's going on, where he should go, and potentially who do you think is a good matchup for him for that final sayonara, that the last tip of Cowboy's hat potentially?
Well, I might get a lot of backlash for saying this, but I do agree with Dana White and the UFC giving Donald another fight. Give him one more fight. Let him go down to 155 pounds. But I guarantee you that it is concrete, set in stone, that even if Donald goes out and gets a highlight reel signature win, they're not going to let him come back and compete again. And you got to give the guy a little bit of slack. When you look at the skid he's on, look at the competition he's faced. We're talking the top of the heap: Conor McGregor, Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson, household names, guys that are, champions, number one contenders, guys that are the best in the world. And just like you said, Paul, Alex Morono, everybody knows who Cowboy Cerrone is. We've been watching his fights. I've been watching Donald fight since before I ever even started training mixed martial arts. So it's hard for a guy like Donald on such a short notice to get ready for a guy in Alex Morono. And I feel like the Diego Sanchez fight was the perfect fight for him. And I think that had that fight got to happen and Donald won, I think that he would have rode off in the sunset, and that would have been the last we saw of Cowboy. So I like the idea of the UFC giving him one more shot. I don't want to see it be against some young up-and-comer. I'd like to see him fight somebody that's more of a grizzled vet, somebody that's more of a legacy type of fight. And there's a few guys at 155 pounds that can give him that type of fight. You got, Joe Lozon, he had that sensational performance against Jonathan Pierce back at the TD Garden in 2019. I know Dana said he wanted him to retire after that fight. And I know Lozon was kind of on the fence about it. He hasn't formally said he's retired yet. So maybe a Joe Lozon Donald Cerrone fight, maybe another Donald Cerrone Jim Miller fight, something of that sort. I would like to see Donald in a fight like that. I don't want to see him fight another hungry up-and-comer. I think that, let's give him one more fight. Let's give him a legacy fight, and win or lose, let Cowboy ride off in the sunset. But, everybody needs to remember this guy is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and it unarguably is in the top 5 for most liked fighter in the UFC. Everybody loves Cowboy Cerrone. I think the world of the guy, and I'd like to see him, just like he says himself, we all want to see him ride off in the sunset on a win.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I just know how good Cowboy is. I spent a long time living in the same house with that man, and he really kind of catapulted my career to where it ended up and got me on the fast track with the UFC. If it wasn't for him, that first Edson Barboza fight doesn't happen. He made that call. He called the UFC and said, hey, you got to give this kid the shot, because Edson's opponent got hurt and they needed somebody, and I stepped in. And Cowboy taught me that mentality. What he started his career saying that he was is how he has finished his career. There's a lot of people that change their ways and change their mindsets to make things easier for themselves. And Donald Cerrone has never done that. So for all the people that are out there, anybody giving him hate because he's dropped some fights, you can go yourself, because this guy will fight anybody, anywhere, anytime, like he has always said from the beginning, and has lived up to this far into his career, broken so many records, done so many things. So I think Dana White is right as well, Michael, to give him what he wants. If he says, listen, I just want one more and that's it, and I want it to be at the weight class that I started this crazy journey at, then that's what he gets. And I agree. It should be somebody, and we're not saying he doesn't have the skills to beat anybody. Still, I think he does. But let him have a little fun in there with somebody else who's sort of, in the same boat, wants to do the same thing, wants to fight a legend, and maybe wants to end their career very soon. But another amazing fight on that card was another former opponent of yours. My God, this is all we have. Oh, Neal Magny put on a great performance on Saturday night against Geoff Neal, who's one of the scariest strikers in the world. Right?
Yeah, Geoff Neal.
Geoff Neal. Sorry. I mixed up two names in my head real quick, and then I'm like, I'm saying the wrong name. Sorry, go ahead. What are your thoughts on that fight?
It's the Neal versus Neal. The Neal versus Neal is going to throw
me off. Neal Magny, Geoff Neal.
That was a sensational performance. Look, Geoff Neal is pound for pound one of the hardest punchers in the UFC. And I really mean pound for pound. This guy, if he touches your chin, he's going to put your lights out. And, he was on a fight win streak before he fought Wonderboy. Fought a great fight against Wonderboy. That fight was phenomenal. And, and Geoff Neal, sorry, I almost got mixed up when I said Neal versus Neal. Geoff Neal versus Neal Magny was supposed to happen August 28th of last year. And that's when Geoff Neal, he caught sepsis, got a real bad, just a real wicked bacteria in his system, and damn near he had heart failure. The guy went through the ringer and then came back and fought Wonderboy Thompson. So they finally rebooked the Neal Magny fight. And Neal Magny won this fight doing what Neal Magny does best, and that is he beats people with volume. And anytime Geoff would land a hard strike or get a good combination off, Neal would come back with maybe not as hard as strikes, because like I said, Geoff Neal is one of the hardest hitters in the UFC, and Neal Magny doesn't have this, not even half the power that Geoff Neal does. And I say that with all due respect. But anytime Geoff Neal hit him with something, he would come back at him with double the volume. So it was just, a lot of jabs, a lot of push kicks. And, he kept Geoff Neal from being able to hold the center of the octagon. He brought him past that black line that we always talk about. There's a black line that's right around the cage panels in the octagon. And he kept him on that black line and just fought a typical sensational Neal Magny-esque performance. And, and right when the fight gets over, everybody's already starting to talk about him versus Khamzat. Khamzat comes out on Twitter and says, don't run like a chicken or something of that sort. And here's the funny thing about that tweet, and bless Khamzat's heart, Neal Magny was never running from you. Neal Magny was one of the only guys that was campaigning for a fight with Khamzat Chimaev before he caught COVID, before, he's had this little setback that some of us around the world have had to go through with the whole COVID situation. But Neal Magny don't run from nobody. He's down to fight anybody, anywhere. So when Khamzat comes out and says, don't run like a chicken, it's like Neal Magny, he ain't the type to run from anybody. He's actually one of the guys who's on the front running to try to get a fight with Khamzat Chimaev.
Yeah, he was on that front line about to dive into it. He just wants a good scrap. Neal's a maniac like that, one of the nicest guys, but like you said, not afraid of anybody on the roster that wants a good scrap. But speaking of Twitter and exchanges, Conor McGregor had a nice Q&A very recently, and there were some interesting questions that were asked, and he answered them. And the first one that I think is very kind of hilarious and a nice little jab with this bout coming up is, your easiest win? And he says, Poirier. Obviously, he's going to say that. He's trying to get inside the head of Mr. Dustin Poirier. But, you know, say what you want about Conor. When he does these kind of things, he's quite hilarious most of the time.
Yeah, it is pretty funny considering he has a 13-second knockout win over Jose Aldo. You would think that would be his easiest win to date. Yeah, he's just taking a shot at Poirier. And another one of his questions involved him asking if he's ever going to go back up to 170 pounds. And he says he wants to go back up to 170. He says he liked the way he felt at welterweight. What are your thoughts on that, Paul?
Oh, I mean, listen, I do think he's undersized, obviously, right? I mean, but I think there are certain fights there that make a lot of sense for him. And I do think that if he does continue to stay active and take fights, that especially if he doesn't end up winning the lightweight belt in the future, then I think we'll see Conor just kind of pick these mega pay-per-view fights, maybe grudge matches, fights that interest him. He doesn't really care about weight class. He's interested in what's going to sell, what's the challenge, what's fun for him. So if that means 170, 155, I don't think we'll ever see him go back to 45 is the only thing. We might see him at 85 for all I know. He's a wild man. And he's also got his third kid coming this week. And in the last training camps, we've seen him stay at home, bring the kids, bring everybody with him. But now he's saying he's going to go away. He's going to be a little more isolated and get back to that old Conor. I think this is what he needs to do. It's a hard thing for anybody that's got a family or any children, but it's what needs to be done if he wants to get that belt back.
Yeah, I think that's the right move for him. I mean, outside of, the growing McGregor clan, he's got his hands in a lot of different businesses and things of that sort. And this is, I think he's almost going back to the way he approached the Nate Diaz rematch. I remember when he rematched Nate Diaz, it was the same thing. Just like he dropped the Iron Curtain and put the blinders up and just had tunnel vision focus on Nate Diaz in that rematch. And he came out and won. So I think he's going to have that same approach headed into this third fight with Dustin Poirier. I mean, it's high stakes. I mean, usually the trilogy, it ends at the trilogy. You don't get a fourth fight. So I think he's making the right move there. And another thing that he talked about is, we've seen what he's done with Proper 12, challenged the Jameson powerhouse of Irish whiskeys with Proper 12, and talked about now he wants to make a stout. Now he wants to lock horns with Guinness. What are your thoughts on that, Paul?
This is crazy. He wants to be the face of Ireland, that's for sure. I mean, he went after Jameson and took that challenge, and that Proper 12 is somehow doing amazing. It's not my whiskey of choice, but a stout I'd be interested to try, just like I was with Proper 12. I mean, it's not bad. And if he's going to keep making these things and making tons of money, man, good for you. Go on with it. I don't know. I don't know about a stout. I don't know how that's going to work out. What do you think? You got the whole beard of a nice brewmaster going on, Michael.
Would
you drink it?
I like this. I like stouts. I try a Conor McGregor stout for sure.
I definitely try.
I'm a beer nut. I love beer. But I'm more of an IPA guy. If I was to come out with my own type of beer, I'd come out with like a hazy IPA. That's more my style. I'm a sucker for a good IPA. I like the extra hops.
I am, especially a hazy IPA. But he also talked about investing into a football club. One of the major ones that was mentioned, obviously, is Man U and Celtic FC, a Scottish football club as well. I actually have one of their jerseys upstairs from when me and Duke went over to Scotland and fought over there. But what are your thoughts on that, on Mr. Conor also having his hands in the pot of a major soccer team?
It comes as no surprise. I think that Conor's got money by the boatload and he knows what to do with it. And that's a good move for him. I think that, we've seen pictures and videos of him out at, at different soccer matches and things of that sort. So I think, if you got the money, it's a smart investment. And, one of the last question I got on this list, something that I think you'll something that you can relate to. Is he says his favorite food not in camp is donuts.
I know.
What's your favorite type of donut, Paul? Tell me about these. Tell me about your connection to donuts.
Okay, I don't know where it's at in Vegas, but when we were at the PI recently, there were these mochi donuts that somebody brought in, and they are like these. They look like almost like little teeny dough balls put together into a ring with this glaze on them. Now, it's not my favorite donut of all time. Obviously, I'm a big Boston cream guy, and just a classic glazed donut as well. But these things were unbelievable, Michael. Maybe we can find out from one of our producers later. Somebody might have had them too. I know Deirdre had them when I had them.
Deirdre, get the donuts.
Dude, they were so good. They were like light but chewy, and just get out of here. And Pinkies in Vegas, they're always at the PI floating around too. I'm like, it's trouble, man.
Dude, see, I'm a little more traditional. I'm a sucker for a good maple bar. And for people back home that haven't tried this, go get yourself a maple bar, cook yourself up some fresh bacon, throw 2 slabs of bacon on top of that maple bar, put that thing down the hatch, and call me and tell me about it after you try it. But look, let's move on to the rapid fire question. 5 rounds. Round 1, Giga Chikadze has came out and said that he is a better boxer than Max Holloway. What are your thoughts on that?
False. Is that the right answer? That's false. I think he's a better kicker. Maybe a more dynamic kickboxer. He's got a ton, and I love Giga. I'm a mega fan, and obviously, he's putting it out there. He's doing his thing. But no, I disagree. I do not think that he is a better boxer than one Max Holloway.
No, I totally agree with you. I think that's him trying to find some little way to get his way into a fight with Max Holloway. Because I know he's openly said that that's what he wants to fight next. But I mean, this guy's a former Glory champion. I mean, this guy's Glory kickboxing. Yeah, he's a better kickboxer, but he ain't a better boxer than Mr. Blessed Max Holloway.
All right, round 2, Michael. Jake Paul versus Floyd Mayweather's hat. Did you see this fiasco?
It's impossible not to see anything Jake Paul does because it just makes headlines. You get the TMZ alerts. It breaks the internet. But yeah, I definitely saw it, and I think he got pieced up for it because I'm pretty sure Mr. Floyd Money Mayweather gave him a little 3-piece in the soda and gave him a little shiner. So I did see that, and man, how do you not see what Jake Paul does anymore? It's just in your face all the time. The guy's just making headlines left and right, and we're talking about him again. God dang it!
He's winning, and he knows it. When you watch the interviews with this guy, this kid, he's smart, man. He's just doing what he knows is going to get him where he wants to go, and that's become famous, make more money. He's a YouTube star. He's an internet star. He knows how to troll these people and make them look silly. And Floyd bought right into it. You show up grizzled, bad haircut, nothing going on. You wear this hat and he rips it off and he got his butt beat for it, but he it's what happens. And I'm going to just move on from myself here and talk about this one, round 3. And I want to talk about this Diego Sanchez and Fabia and his coach. And I just want to put it to bed, right? I know there's a video that's been out there from the fighter meetings. And what a lot of people don't realize is that fighter meeting went completely fine up until that point. And, they had an agenda to cover and it didn't work out. But nobody was trying to be malicious in that meeting, and it shouldn't have been filmed. It shouldn't have been put on the internet. That's not usually how our fighter meetings go. You know that. And now that Diego is out in the UFC, I just want to say I wish him the best. I hope that whatever is going on with him and, his health issues, if there are any, I know there was medical records requested and all this crap. I just hope the best for everybody. And I just hope that he's healthy and happy moving forward, and I hope he stops fighting. I hope he doesn't get signed or picked up for anything else, because I think he just needs to enjoy the rest of his life outside of fighting. The end.
Yeah, and that's for people back home, though. And I don't mean to interrupt you, Paul, but
no, I'm just
people back home. Look, the production staff, every single employee of the UFC has the utmost, highest level of professionalism. And there's never been any malicious intent, or there's never been no foul play on any part with anybody amongst the UFC, particularly the production staff, because I know that a lot of this stuff was aimed at you guys. And like you said, there was an agenda that they were pushing, and unfortunately, for the people that truly know the sport and truly know the UFC, and you and Zach and just everybody amongst the production staff, that they couldn't have been any more wrong. So it's an unfortunate turn of events, and we all wish Diego the best.
Absolutely.
And Mike Ricci. Don't forget to shout out Mike Ricci. Mike Ricci.
Mike Ricci would tell us to move on to round 4. And we never really got a chance, real quick. We never really got a chance to react to Yuri versus Jan or Glover, the winner of that fight. What are your thoughts on that? What were your thoughts on the crazy man's performance? This dude's a wild man, is he not? He is fun to watch. And for only having had 2 fights in the UFC, he's already going to be fighting for a title.
Look, I'm going to have to talk slowly and try to move the least amount possible, because if I react the way I want to when I answer this question, this camera's going in and out of focus, and it might explode if I let these Italian hands get to moving. But look, Yuri Prochazka is all action. I mean, this is like a light heavyweight Russian version of Tony Ferguson, spinning elbows, crazy attacks, unorthodox personality. This guy is must-see TV, just exactly what the light heavyweight division needs. Look, we've got phenomenal fighters at 205 pounds, but this guy's a new shot of life into the top 5, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Jan Blachowicz versus Glover Teixeira pans out at UFC 266, going down in September. But Yuri Prochazka has solidified himself as the #1 contender. The way he took out 2 former title challengers in devastating fashion, the guy is phenomenal. I'm a fanboy. I'm a huge fanboy of Yuri Prochazka. I think the guy's amazing.
Yeah.
But we'll move on to round 5. Start Gregor Gillespie. Gregor Gillespie gets on the microphone after that sensational fight of the night performance win over Carlos Diego Ferreira, and he says he's the best fisherman in MMA. And that kind of got a little rise out of some guys, and Conor McGregor, Bryce Mitchell, a few other fighters of that sort. But I got to ask you, Paul, for a guy in Gregor to say he's the best fisherman in the UFC, if you were to make put out a statement saying you were the best at something amongst the fighters in the UFC, what would it be?
Well, I mean, I'm probably one of a few, if not the only one, who has a BFA in acting, a degree from a University of the Arts, which is basically a conservatory, where the most schoolwork that I had to do was, I think, 1 paper and 1 math course in 4 years of a college university. So, I mean, I studied acting for 4 years pretty hard, all the way down to Shakespeare and the Greek tragedies and all that nonsense. So I would hope and like to think that I'm one of the best actors on the UFC roster, if not the best, of course.
I think the only person that would disagree with you would be Michael Bisping. But you know what? Take a seat, Bisping. I'm going with my guy, Paul Felder. You are the best actor in the UFC. You got shows coming up, big things. I can't say them. I'm leaving that for you when you want to put it out there. But if I was to make a claim that I'm the best at something amongst the fighters in the UFC, I would say I'm the best backcountry snowboarder. I'm not the best at tricks, but I'm really good at riding challenging terrain, some slick rock faces, doing some things that, Sean Shelby, Dana White, and Hunter Campbell would not agree with me doing in my free time. I would say I'm the best backcountry snowboarder in the UFC for sure.
Yeah, you're definitely better than me, Michael Chiesa, that is for sure. But listen, that's all we got for today. Enjoy the fights this Saturday. Sold out crowd, UFC 262, Oliveira versus Chandler. And guys, if you want to become a part of this show and have your questions featured, please comment on our YouTube channel, hashtag UFC Roundup with any questions that you might have if you want to be featured in any later episodes, or hit us up on social media, Twitter, Instagram. Just make sure you hashtag UFC Roundup and join us next week, where we'll be unpacking UFC 262 and looking forward to what's coming next. I'm Paul Felder. He's Michael Chiesa. Enjoy the fight, guys. Please. It's going to be crazy.